Mr. McGee, don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
You are about to listen to the Totally Super Awesome 80s Reboot Overdrive podcast.
This podcast is our fan tribute to the Incredible Hulk TV show. Be advised it has been exposed to radiation and we caution to listen at your own risk. You have now entered GammaCast.
And welcome to the GammaCast. I'm your host, Charlie, the Professor Esser. With me, once again, is the lovely, the brilliant, the transcendental, the transcendent.
80s music girl.
Oh, 80s music girl. You come to this plane of existence and give us all the glory that is you. And we are, as always, so unworthy of it. And I thank you, as always, for talking the Incredible Hulk with me.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure.
Tonight's episode, Season 4, Episode 17, first air date, May 15th, 1981. Danny. David tries to help a young widow and her baby get away from living with a criminal hick brother-in-law. Directed by Mark A. Burley, written by Kenneth Johnson and Diane Frolov. Yeah, well, I've always, they do have a lot of women writers on this show, which is maybe why they do tend to have some pretty strong female characters. And our strong female character tonight is Rachel, played by Robin Dearden. Mm-hmm. And the last time we met Robin Dearden was in The Brainchild.
Yeah.
Where she played the super genius, brilliant girl, which was pretty cool. The girl who was raised in the Genius Factory for a while there. She, of course, she has been all around. Lots of Fantasy Islands here. She was in the 2006. Wow, she was in a bunch of the. Oh, she was a voice actor. She was Chief Cuckles in the 2016 Fantasy Island, which
really
I have no idea who that character was, but I'm real excited now. I'm gonna have to look it up. I never noticed that about her. I knew she was in it, but I didn't really put the two and two together. Okay. This is an interesting episode, and this is another one of these episodes not dissimilar from what we had in The Harder They Fall, where you have a trailer that makes you think one thing is going to happen in the story, then we get to the story and we realize it's a completely different thing. So in the trailer, it very much seems like the angry rednecks we meet at the first part of the episode in the Chevy Jimmy are our antagonists.
Mm-hmm.
But when we actually get to it, we realize that Nat, played by the great Don Strode, who I'm sure you recognized. He plays a lot of, shall we say, roughneck characters, guys who are kind of jerks.
Yeah. Oh, I'm very familiar with Don Strode. I actually made that one of my notes. Note points, only because you just can't get enough of him. He just has that persona down so well.
Yeah, and and like I say, he gets lots of work. They keep on bringing him back. He was on Dragnet. He was on the new Mike Hammer, all in a recurring role. So he has definitely been around, and he's made his bones, and he was in Nash Bridges as Gordon Shaw in 1997. A lot of other roles. He was in Django Unchained. That is his last role in 2012. He played Sheriff Bill Sharp, which, again, I'm going to wager, wasn't that nice of a guy. I've never seen Django Unchained. But I'm pretty safe saying, you know what, I'm going to wager any actor wasn't that nice of a guy.
Hmm.
But we open up and David is hitchhiking. We see our two local farmers searching for this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like I say, from the trailers, you're not quite sure because you almost think Dan Stroud is one of the guys who's hunting the folks down here, and
Mm-hmm.
you're not quite sure what the thing is from the trailer. But here we actually get it played out, and we see that this guy Ben is being chased by these guys, and David, he's got his thumb out, and they stop
Mm-hmm.
for him, but not to give him a ride, to ask him if he's seen anyone. And David very clearly
Yeah.
sees Ben, but he says nope, didn't see anyone. But he sees the guy there, and but rather than say, oh yeah, he's right, I see a guy right over there. Is that the guy you're looking for? David knows enough as a drifter himself to realize that the guy being chased as a drifter isn't always in the wrong. Although, interesting enough, ironically, this guy absolutely was in the wrong.
Right.
And I think that is what I like a lot about this episode,
Mm-hmm.
is that it does not pull punches about the criminality of people.
No.
Normally it would be, David meets the misunderstood fellow hobos with hearts of gold. In this case, not so much, But David helps Ben back to his little camp. They're welcomed in, but of course Nat immediately, doesn't trust David.
Well, no.
What I found interesting was that before you realize that he's really the bad guy, before you realize that Nate is the absolute bad guy of this episode,
Mm-hmm.
you kind of think that, it's supposed to be ironic that he says, oh yeah, townies always doubt the drifters,
Mm-hmm.
but then here he is doubting the drifter who just came into his neck of the woods. He's not practicing what he preaches, as they say.
No.
But then we realize that it's a lot deeper than that, because it's really that he does not want to get caught because they're trying to steal this farm equipment,
Right.
which was very, very interesting. We see that David meets Rachel, who, despite being a lady hobo, has very well manicured eyebrows. Yeah, that's the thing I noticed. Well, just because you're a hobo lady doesn't mean you can't take the time to wax your own eyebrows, I suppose, is the moral of that story.
Girl's got to keep herself looking good.
Yes. And she did rock that overall, I mean...
Well, it was a little baggy in certain spots,
but you know what,
in all fairness, it probably wasn't even hers. I mean,
Well, yeah, it's probably, it's hand-me-downs. As he says, everything
Mm-hmm.
in her suitcase is hand-me-downs.
Yeah, it's fun.
But I thought she cut a very lovely figure in it. And, and she has the whole maternal thing going for her because she has her baby, Danny. And we find out that her husband, Tim, has passed on. And we don't immediately get why he passed on, although it is later implied that maybe he passed on because he was not as committed to the criminality as Nate was.
Right.
Because at a later point, Ben's saying, like, hey, we got to go back and get, Rachel and the baby. We can't just leave them behind. And Nat says that's kind of thinking that got Tim killed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is,
Yeah.
not good. I think we can all agree, not good. But we see that Nat would like to wed Rachel. Rachel is not feeling it because Nat is an abusive, controlling jerk. For what it's worth. And being an abusive, controlling jerk is not someone she wants to raise her child around.
No.
We found out that she does have an aunt who is not a traveling folk, but a woman who has a house and sits herself down and does what she needs to do to get by, and Rachel decides she's going to run away to her.
Yeah.
And unrelated, David is saying it's time for me to move on too.
Yeah.
Because David realizes that these guys are definitely trouble. And he'd just as soon walk away from them. You know? And he does his best, but of course he runs into Rachel on the road. And, actually this was one of those things that, and this is actually something I wanted to mention earlier, and I totally slipped my mind until this moment. When he first picks up Ben, I think we get a sense as to why David keeps on getting involved in these people's lives when ostensibly he's always supposed to be, running forward. Because when he looks at Ben, he looks in his eyes, and you can see he's looking for a concussion.
Yeah.
And clearly he saw something as Ben was, recovering that told him someone needs to watch this guy for at least a couple hours.
Yeah.
And that's what he does, And then once he's realized that, okay, I think Ben's okay, he goes to move on, but then he runs into, again, Rachel.
Right.
And he and her have to carry the baby cross country to get to her aunt's house where she can start her new life.
Right.
And
they don't get very far.
No, well, you know what it is she says, I know where there's a truck, and she's taking them to the stolen truck. Unfortunately, before they can get to the truck, Nat and Ben catch up with her, and we know that Nat is of the opinion that, I've already told you I will marry you. Why do you not want that to be who you marry?
Gee, I just can't imagine why.
Yeah, he's not big into feminine autonomy, apparently. So, they decide so Ben and Nat hold them at gunpoint. They beat up David because, of course, that always works out well for people who do it. Throw him down the hill into the barbed wire, and, of course, up comes the Hulk.
Yeah.
And, they have their guns and they're ready to shoot, but, they are so flabbergasted by the existence of a Hulk that they don't, and then the Hulk knocks over a windmill on top of them. I do think so much of this show is shot on Universal Studios backlot, but that's okay. Especially every city scene. I really think all those city scenes look exactly alike for a reason.
You ever try to do that? You ever try and see just exactly how many times they've used certain storefronts and things like that?
Oh, I need to be much better rested before I try something like that. Honestly, it's all I can do not to fall asleep and start talking about Captain America again. There is an effort involved in staying up to do this podcast, but it's worth it because I love doing it. I love watching the episode. But so the Hulk's out, and the Hulk decides to take the baby. Again,
he steals the baby.
Yeah, well, again, it's a scene that's makes you wonder what is the motivation here. Is this just it's much more convenient if David takes the baby, or is there a reason why he's taking the baby? And I get to this idea here that between Rachel and Nate, that Nate does not like the fact that there are children around, and given his druthers, there would not be a child around. And of course, that's what Rachel can't deal with, and to that extent, I think that's why the Hulk takes the baby.
Yeah.
Because Hulk is looking at this situation, he knows this guy who's pulling a shotgun on him, as he's holding the baby, likely isn't a safe man to leave the baby with.
Yes.
So the Hulk and Danny, who's our baby, run off. The Hulk converts back to his David Banner form, and Danny still has not pooped his diaper, so good for Danny.
I know.
Yeah, well, he's a very well-behaved baby. He's waiting to. He knows that everyone has. He
cries a lot, though.
Yeah, well, if you were holding in the poop for that long, you would start crying too.
I like a well-placed scarecrow.
Yeah, if you're gonna have a scarecrow, have it in the middle of the field with no crops.
And fully dressed,
yes,
so David could use the clothes.
Make sure it's a very, go out and buy new clothes for the Scarecrow. You want that Scarecrow to be a fashion plate. But David steals the clothes of the Scarecrow, and then he goes and takes the truck.
Yeah.
Re-steals it.
Yeah, he steals a stolen truck.
Yes. Now, of course, in that meantime, our hippie friends come back with Wilma, and not hippie, but redneck traveler friends. Yeah, I'll just say they look like they'd be at home at Burning Man. Where was I? They realize that David has stolen the truck, which Nat is like very cool with. Like, great, man. I didn't want us to steal that truck anyway. That's got serial numbers, because we see that their whole scam here is you steal the farm equipment because there's no serial numbers, which means it's very hard to catch you.
Right.
Because it's hard to say they have evidence that this is the one that was stolen, since it doesn't have any identifying markings.
Right.
In the meantime, David is taken off with the truck, and the guys in the Jimmy realize that it's him and go to run him off the road. Yes. Which kind of was confusing to me, because it's like, you're all upset that they stole your truck, so you're going to actually go attack your own truck?
Well.
Yeah, well.
It is his truck.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like how they're using the CBs.
Oh, yeah.
CB radios to communicate us. He's like, oh, call the police. And I'm like, call them with what? Oh, yeah, that's right. CB radio.
Yeah.
Everybody had them back then.
Well,
They were so popular they made a movie about it.
Oh, yeah, good old Convoy. Or you're talking about Smoking the Bandit. But,
either one. It was pick one.
Good old Rubber Duck. He will always be. And, of course, BJ and the Bear, your TV series about a trucker.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes. Loved BJ and the Bear as a kid. Anyway, so David in his stolen truck with his stolen baby, as he's trying to get back to them, gets pulled over by the farmers, who basically say, hey, look, you're in a stolen van that was stolen by the people who stole the farm equipment. And David's like, oh, I know where we can find that.
Yeah.
So they all go back, and Nat, he's getting a little over the edge here, because he does get the drop on David and the farmers, and holds them at gunpoint, and puts them all in the in the shed, and then commences to dig a grave for them.
Yeah.
Which I have to say seemed a little bit like overkill.
Well, yeah, no pun intended, but yeah. It was a bit of overkill there, wasn't it? But you could kind of see how much of a psycho he really is.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so they do, so as Nat is trying to get these guys into the grave, he has them at gunpoint, because he's already disarmed them, because the farmers were being big bads with their shotguns, and then, and it just goes to show you, you can have a gun, but if the other guy has a gun and no compunction about killing people, your gun is a lot less useful.
Absolutely.
They throw him in the hole, and this causes David to have his second Hulk out of the episode, and I thought this was very weird, because he was in there with the other farmers.
Yeah.
But still, he comes out, and no one puts the two and two together.
Well, and see, the whole thing of it was, I think maybe there was dirt in their face, their eyes, their ears, or whatever, and you see them flying out first, and then you see the Hulk. So it's like, get out of my way, I need space.
But not for nothing. 3 men came into the hole, 2 men came out, and a Hulk, so.
Yeah.
I'm just saying the math probably isn't as
2
hard
men and a Hulk, ladies and gentlemen.
That sounds like my first improv troupe. Yes. But it just, the math shouldn't be as hard as it seems to be for everyone. But of course, the Hulk does come out. He saves the day. We get Hulk versus a front loader, which was kind of cool because we haven't gotten Hulk versus the piece of machinery in a while.
Yeah.
And I thought this worked out very nicely. They invested in a bendable front cap for it so that you could actually see Lou Ferrigno's hands turning the steel on the shovel.
Mm-hmm.
So that was cool. And then Lou Ferrigno flips the tractor, and the bad guys are caught. Yay!
Yay!
Which brings us to our final coda of the episode, where we see Rachel is now in a proper lady's dress, pushing a pram with her baby in it, No longer a overall-wearing hobo, but a proper lady that you could pass off at the Queen's Ball. She learned to walk and to talk like a regular lady. We find out that Ben was not as evil as Nat, so he'll get out in a few years, and Rachel's aunt says, "Sure, have him come live with you too." Which actually, it's not the weirdest thing when you think about the idea that hey, she's a single mom. Here's a guy who maybe can be on the right track, and is certainly not opposed to being with her.
Absolutely.
She's a single mom who used to be a hobo con artist, so her pickings are somewhat slim. But if her and Ben can get on the right track, then maybe good things can come from all of it, and that's what you always hope for.
Absolutely.
Rachel asks, Dave, do you want to just settle down? Do you want to stay here? And this is one of these moments where you kind of feel like, does David really need to run right now?
Yeah.
We know he will, and you can maybe even make the argument that he has to move on, not because even the Hulk has been found, but because if he stayed, he may never leave.
Yeah.
That temptation of that family, it's really strong. And,
it is.
He may not be able to resist it if he were to stay. And he knows that would just be endangering everyone else, himself, and his secret. So he moves on, and we cue the Lonely Man theme.
Yeah.
That was all of tonight's episode. 80s Music Girl, do you have any thoughts, any critiques, any ideas that speak to you about the hero's journey that is David Banner and the Hulk?
I thought this was kind of a peculiar episode, actually. I don't know how much, I know hobos were kind of big back in the day.
Yeah.
Where, men were at work and they were traveling from town to town trying to, and the handyman thing was kind of it was plausible. So when they said they were traveling handyman, it was kind of like, okay, yeah, I can believe that.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much of what Don Stroud what he's saying about they don't like the free men. And I think, I don't know how, what part of society, he was speaking about, but it was almost as if he was saying something, to bring, a special culture to light or something like that. I don't know, because you kind of got that feeling like maybe, maybe people were a little afraid of folks walking around at night, with nothing on their minds, just hanging out in the woods and sleeping in tents.
Yes.
But, so that kind of is like, okay, what kind of work do they do? That, asked that question in my mind, and of course you find out they're stealing farm equipment. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you're not the heroes that you claim sticking up for the little guy. You're just basically crooks. So another thing I noticed, the mouth harp.
Oh.
I don't know what that was all about.
You know what I'm glad you brought that up, because that was like, you know what? They had the most ominous mouth harp I have ever heard.
Yeah.
And, the mouth harp, it is normally, you use it to invoke that sense of comedy, that sense of rural wackiness.
Yeah.
But they actually have the guy playing the mouth harp going like, bum, 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 with the mouth harp, the bum, 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 it's like, you realize, wow, that can be a scary instrument if you play it right.
Yeah. So much for, because you expect something like that, like in a clown episode or something, or,
Yeah, but it
was...
just
being chased by bulls or something like that, I don't know.
But it was nice to see how it was approached and
yeah.
how the music, I actually think that, often the music in the Hulk is really good.
Mm-hmm.
For that 70s, jazzy feel, it actually communicates the emotions of the scene very well.
Yeah, especially at the end when they did the harmonica version of the Lonely Man theme. I thought, wow, that makes it extra sad now.
Yeah. Oh, it always is, man.
Because, harmonicas are pretty much, used for cowboy campouts and prison scenes, so it just kind of makes you wonder why they threw it in.
Well, because it invokes the idea of the freeman's life.
There you go.
And that's what it is. Because, the thing about harmonicas, they're a fixed-reed instrument, but they're very small. So there's something you can carry around with you, and so, when people were in the wars, they often carried a harmonica with them because it was the only method of real entertainment that they had. And so, you can do a lot with a harmonica. So I don't fault the harmonica. And like I said, I was really impressed by them doing Dark and Ominous on the mouth harp. And and as far as I could tell, it worked because, these characters seemed very much in danger.
Yeah,
when the music turned scary. So so that's a positive. Okay.
Yeah.
80s Music Girl. If people would like to reach out to you and talk to you about the 80s, about music, or about all the things incredible about the Hulk, how can they reach you?
I'm at 80s Music Girl on Twitter, and 80s Music Girl on Instagram, and 80s Music Girl on Facebook. Okay.
And, of course, if you'd ever like to write to me in that old-fashioned email way, you can do so at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, at facebook.com. And, of course, you can follow me on the Twitters as I live tweet something at some point. At Charlie Esser, that's CharlieEsser. Look for the two E's in the middle for quality. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for hulking out with us once again here on the GammaCast. Tune in next week when we will hulk out once more.
We hope you've enjoyed this show. This podcast is part of the 80s Reboot Overdrive channel on Southgate Media Group. You can follow us on Facebook on the 80s Reboot group page. We're also on Twitter and Tumblr at 80s Reboot. We invite you to check out all the wonderful podcasts and blogs available at southgatemediagroup.com. And thank you for reliving the 80s.